On my 70th birthday, I expected at least a smile. Maybe a cake or a simple happy birthday, Dad. Instead, my children looked at me as if I were a burden, as if I had overstayed my welcome in life itself. "We don't celebrate old age," my daughter Emily said coldly. Those 6 words shattered me. Imagine dedicating 7 decades of your life to raising a family only to be dismissed like you're nothing. I sat there frozen, my heart breaking, while my son Mark avoided my eyes. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply lowered my head, swallowed the pain, and walked away. What they didn't know was that less than 24 hours later, they would be at my doorstep, begging me for something only I could give. And that day, they learned the hardest lesson of their lives. I wasn't born with riches, not even close. My hands were my only wealth, my tools my only companions. As a carpenter, I worked from sunrise until the moon was high, shaping wood while my body ached and my stomach stayed empty. Sometimes my hands would bleed into the very grain of the tables I built, as if pieces of me were carved into every creation. Each nail I hammered wasn't just for a client, it was for my family's future. When Mark wanted to go to college, I didn't hesitate. I looked at my wall of tools, the chisels and saws I had collected over decades, each with its own story, and I sold them all. Those tools weren't just objects. They were my life's work, my pride. But in that moment, my pride meant nothing compared to my son's future. I smiled through the loss, telling myself, one day he will remember this sacrifice. Then came Emily's wedding. She dreamed of a white dress she could never afford. I knew what that dress meant to her, the symbol of every little girl's dream to feel like a princess. So I reached into the drawer where I kept the last gift from my late wife, the golden wedding ring she had slipped onto my finger decades ago. My heart broke as I handed it to the pawnbroker, but I didn't flinch. I told myself my daughter deserves happiness. My wife would understand. Emily walked down the aisle glowing that day, but not once did she look back at me with gratitude. Every sacrifice was made with love. Not once did I complain. Not once did I ask for repayment. Because I believed, no, I knew, that family always comes first. I thought love was enough. But somewhere along the way, my children forgot. The calls grew fewer, the visits shorter. The warmth that once filled our home slowly turned into a chilling silence. I used to hear laughter echoing through these walls. Now all I heard was the creak of empty floorboards and the hum of loneliness. And then, on my 70th birthday, when I expected at least a whisper of appreciation for those years of sacrifice, all I received was a cold reminder that in their eyes I was nothing but old age. They didn't remember the tools I sold, the ring I gave away, or the years I spent breaking my body to build their futures. To them, I wasn't a father. I wasn't a man who had given everything. I was just a burden. On the morning of my 70th birthday, I took extra care getting dressed. My joints ached and my back protested, but I stood in front of the mirror and buttoned up the same faded blue shirt my wife once told me made me look young. For a moment, I almost heard her voice again, gentle, warm, alive. I ran my hand over the fabric, pretending it gave me strength. She would have wanted me to look my best today, I whispered to myself. I walked down the hallway slowly, each step echoing in the quiet house. The scent of coffee drifted from the kitchen, and for the first time in years, my heart dared to hope. Maybe, just maybe, my children had remembered. Maybe they had planned something. A cake, a candle, even a simple card with the words, "Happy Birthday, Dad." But when I stepped into the kitchen, the picture I saw nearly broke me in half. Mark sat slouched at the table, eyes glued to his phone, his thumbs moving faster than I had ever seen them move for real work. Emily sat across from him, her legs crossed, scrolling with that same glazed expression of disinterest. No balloons, no decorations, no laughter. Just the hollow sound of 2 grown children lost in the glow of their screens. I cleared my throat, a small, hopeful sound that came out weaker than I intended. "Good morning," I said, forcing cheer into my voice. My lips trembled, but I held on. Do you know what today is?" Mark didn't even bother looking up. He muttered something under his breath, eyes still locked on the screen. Emily finally glanced at me, but not with the warmth of a daughter. Instead, she smirked, a cold, cutting smirk that turned my blood to ice. "Dad," she said casually, as though she were talking about the weather, "we don't celebrate old age. You should be grateful you've made it this far." Her words didn't just sting. They sliced through me like a blade. I had carried lumber heavier than my own body, hammered nails until my hands bled, worked nights so they could sleep in comfort. And yet, nothing had ever hurt more than that sentence. My chest tightened, burning as if a fire had started inside me. I wanted to scream, to slam my fists against the table, to shout every sacrifice I had made. I wanted to remind them that their college degrees, their wedding dresses, their comfortable lives, all of it was built on my broken back. But the words stuck in my throat, choking me. Years of swallowing my pain had taught me silence, so I forced a smile, a hollow, trembling smile that betrayed none of the storm inside me. I understand, I whispered. My voice cracked like old wood splitting under pressure. Then I turned and walked out, each step heavier than the last. My knees wobbled, but it wasn't age that made me stumble. It was heartbreak. Inside, I was crumbling, and though they didn't notice it that morning, their words planted a seed of silence, of betrayal, of something that would grow into a storm they would never forget. I wandered aimlessly through the streets that day, not caring where my feet carried me. The autumn air was sharp, crisp enough to bite at my cheeks, but I barely noticed. My hands were shoved deep in my pockets, fingers brushing against the rough edges of old calluses, scars of a life spent working, building, giving. My heart felt heavier than any plank of wood I had ever lifted. Eventually, I found myself in the park where laughter floated on the breeze. Children ran in circles, their parents cheering them on, their grandparents sitting proudly on benches, wrapped in scarves and warm smiles. I lowered myself onto a cold metal bench and tried to disappear into the background. Then I saw her. A little girl, no more than 7, skipped across the grass, clutching a piece of folded paper. She leapt into her grandfather's arms, hugging him tightly. With shining eyes, she handed him the card she had made, covered in crayon hearts and uneven letters. I could read the words even from where I sat. "Happy birthday, Grandpa." The old man's face lit up, as if he had just been given the world. He kissed her forehead, his voice breaking with joy. The sight pierced me like a nail driven straight into my chest. I turned my face away quickly, afraid someone would see the tears brimming in my eyes. I clenched my jaw, swallowing hard, but the pain spilled out anyway. Why couldn't my own children see me that way? I wondered. Why was I invisible to the very people I lived for? The sun dipped lower, and as the shadows stretched long across the ground, I finally dragged myself back home. My house felt colder than the park bench, emptier than the streets. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with nothing but a crust of bread and a cup of lukewarm tea. No laughter, no cake. Not even the faint buzz of a phone lighting up with a simple "Happy Birthday." My phone stayed silent, mocking me with its stillness as the hours ticked by. I moved to my bed, staring at the ceiling, the silence pressing down on me like a weight I could no longer carry. I thought about all the years I had worked through birthdays, all the times I had pushed aside my own dreams to build theirs. And now, here I was, alone, forgotten, discarded. A single tear slid down my temple and onto the pillow. My lips trembled as I whispered into the empty room, maybe this is how it ends, forgotten, alone. But little did I know. The next morning would bring a storm that would shake the very foundation of my family. At dawn, my phone buzzed violently on the nightstand. Dozens of missed calls from Mark and Emily. My heart raced. Were they finally apologizing? I answered. Emily's voice shook with panic. "Dad, thank God you're okay. Please, you need to come right away. It's about the house. Please hurry." The house? Why would they call me for that? Then Mark's voice boomed in the background. "Dad, it's urgent. We need you to sign something, please." I paused, my stomach sinking. Just yesterday I was useless. Today suddenly I was essential. Something wasn't right. That afternoon I walked into Mark's home. The air inside was thick, heavy, almost suffocating. The sound of muffled whispers died the moment I stepped through the door. Papers littered the table, spread out like a battlefield map. Bank envelopes, warning letters, contracts, all screaming of desperation. Mark sat stiffly in a chair, his leg bouncing nervously. Emily paced back and forth, wringing her hands. The same children who had brushed me aside yesterday now looked pale, their eyes darting toward me with something I hadn't seen in years. Fear? Dad. Emily rushed over, clutching my arm. Her voice cracked. "The bank is threatening to take the property. They need your signature. Please sign these documents and save us." Her words echoed in my head, bouncing against the silence of the night before. Yesterday I wasn't worth a birthday candle. Today I was their lifeline. I stepped toward the table, my eyes scanning the papers. My fingers trembled as I picked one up. The bold letters at the top read, "Foreclosure notice," and then I saw it. The property they were talking about wasn't just any property. It was my home, the same home I built with my wife brick by brick, nail by nail. I could still hear the sound of her laughter bouncing off those walls. Smell the fresh paint we brushed together. Feel the warmth of the fireplace we sat by every Christmas Eve. Every birthday, every holiday, every memory, rooted in that house. My throat tightened. "Oh, why didn't you tell me before?" I asked, my voice low but sharp. Mark avoided my eyes, staring at the floor like a scolded child. We didn't want to bother you." "Didn't want to bother me?" I thought bitterly. They had no problem dismissing me as old and useless yesterday. But now, when the walls were caving in, suddenly I mattered. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She shoved a pen into my hand. "Please, Dad, if you don't sign, we lose everything." I looked down at the pen, feeling the weight of it like it was made of stone. Slowly, deliberately, I placed the papers back on the table. My movements were calm, but inside, my heart was pounding like a drum. "I'll think about it," I said finally. The words hung in the air like smoke. Emily gasped. "Think about it?" "Dad, there's no time." Mark's voice rose, frustration spilling out. "You don't understand how serious this is. Without your signature, the house is gone. Do you want us to be on the street?" I stared at them both, my children, the ones I had sacrificed everything for, and for the first time in my life, I didn't see them as kids. I saw them as strangers, standing in front of me, not out of love, but out of desperation. Their faces fell, disappointment and panic colliding. For years, I had been the one who bent, who sacrificed, who gave without asking anything in return. But this time, for the first time, I had the power, and they knew it. That night, memories came flooding back. I remembered walking home late at night, too tired to eat, yet still kissing my kids' foreheads. I remembered pawning my tools for their futures. I remembered my wife's voice telling me, "No matter what, always protect the family." But now, my family saw me as nothing. I clenched my fists and whispered, "It's time they learn what it means to value someone before it's too late." The next day, I called them to my home. They arrived quickly, desperate. "Dad, please, the deadline is tomorrow. If you don't sign, we'll lose everything," Emily pleaded. I looked at them with calm eyes. "Lose everything?" "Yesterday I already lost something, my children's respect." Silence filled the room. I continued, "I'll sign on one condition. From this day forward, you treat me with respect. Not as a burden, not as old age, but as your father." They nodded eagerly, but just as Mark handed me the pen, a knock echoed at the door. It was Mr. Anderson, my old friend and lawyer. His presence always carried a weight of authority, his neatly pressed suit and steady hands, making him seem like a man who knew every secret in the world. He stepped inside quietly, carrying a thick leather folder under his arm. I rose from my chair, my back straight, and forced a calm smile. "Ah, perfect timing," I said. My voice was measured, deliberate. I turned to Mark and Emily, who looked at him with confusion. "Kids, meet the man who helped me prepare my will." The word hit the room like a thunderclap. Emily blinked, her mouth hanging open. "Your will?" Mr. Anderson gave a curt nod, placing the folder gently on the table. "Yes, your father updated it last week. This home and his savings are no longer in your names." The air seemed to vanish from the room. Emily gasped audibly, her hand flying to her chest. Mark's face drained of color. He looked like someone had pulled the ground out from beneath his feet. I didn't flinch. I let the silence stretch, the weight of it pressing down on them. Finally I spoke. "That's right," I said, my voice calm but sharp as a blade. "I've decided to leave everything to charity. To children who actually value love, not those who throw it away." Emily's eyes darted back and forth, desperate. "Dad, no. You can't be serious." Mark slammed his palm on the table, his mask of arrogance cracking into panic. "You're bluffing. You wouldn't do that to your own blood." I turned my gaze on him slowly, the way a carpenter measures the grain of wood before cutting. "Wouldn't I? Yesterday, I was too old to celebrate. Yesterday, I was nothing but a burden. And now, suddenly, I'm the only one who can save you? Tell me, Mark, tell me, Emily, why should I?" Their lips trembled. Neither could answer. Mr. Anderson cleared his throat, adding weight to my words. "Everything has already been signed, sealed, and notarized. Unless your father chooses otherwise, the property, the savings, the accounts, all of it, will be transferred directly to the foundation he named." The folder snapped shut, the sound slicing through the silence like a gavel striking in court. Emily's knees buckled, and she sank into a chair. "Dad, please. We made a mistake. We were wrong. We didn't mean—" Her words tripped over each other, crumbling into sobs. Mark stared at me, his pride warring with his desperation. "If you do this, we'll lose everything." I leaned forward, my hands pressing against the table, my eyes locking on his. "No, son, you already lost everything the moment you stopped seeing me as your father." The room froze, not a sound, not a breath. Just silence thick enough to drown in, and in that silence, for the first time in years, I felt heard. "Dad, no," Emily cried, her voice shaking as tears poured down her cheeks. She stumbled forward and dropped to her knees beside me, clutching at my hand like a drowning child grabbing a lifeline. "We made a mistake? Please don't do this. Don't leave us with nothing." Mark's mask of arrogance had shattered completely. His lips quivered, his eyes glossy with tears. He tried to blink away. For the first time since he was a boy, I saw him vulnerable, exposed. His voice cracked as he spoke, each word trembling with desperation. "You're right, we were cruel. We thought we didn't need you, but we do. We always did. Please, forgive us." I stood in silence for a long moment, their pleas echoing in the room. My heart twisted painfully in my chest. These were my children, the ones I had cradled in my arms, the ones I had sacrificed everything for. A part of me longed to reach out, to gather them close, and erase the hurt with a single embrace. But another part of me, the part that had been bruised, neglected, and cast aside, refused to be silenced any longer. Finally, I drew in a slow breath and met their tear-streaked faces with steady eyes. My voice, though soft, carried the weight of years of disappointment. "Respect isn't begged for in one day," I said firmly. "It's earned every day, in every word, in every action. Yesterday you dismissed me as too old, as worthless. Today when you need me, suddenly I matter again? That isn't love. That isn't family." Emily sobbed harder, burying her face in her hands. Mark looked away, shame burning across his features. I continued, my voice low but unwavering. "If you truly want forgiveness, don't beg me with words now, when your backs are against the wall. Show me through your actions. Show me by the way you treat me when no one else is watching. Show me that you understand the value of family, not just when you're desperate, but when life is good." The room fell silent. The only sound was Emily's quiet sobs and the ticking of the clock on the wall. I let the silence linger, heavy and uncomfortable, forcing them to sit in the truth of it. For the first time in their lives, they realized something I had known all along. Love is not a transaction. Respect cannot be demanded when convenient. It must be nurtured, protected, and lived. And in that moment, I knew. The power was no longer in their hands. Weeks passed, and something remarkable began to shift. For the first time in years, Mark and Emily started visiting me, not with documents to sign, not with bank problems to dump on my shoulders, but simply to spend time. At first, their presence felt awkward, like strangers trying to rediscover a language they had forgotten. But slowly, meal by meal, conversation by conversation, the distance began to close. We sat together at the same table where I once ate alone. Instead of silence, there was laughter again. Hesitant at first, then warmer as the days rolled on. Mark helped me fix the squeaky door on the porch, just like he used to when he was a boy, holding a hammer too big for his hands. Emily brought old photo albums, pointing out pictures we hadn't looked at in decades, birthdays, graduations, the messy family dinners that once filled our lives with noise and joy. Little by little, they began to see the value of what they almost lost. Not just the house, not the inheritance, but me. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the kitchen walls in golden light, Emily quietly stood up from the table. She carried something small in her hands and placed it in front of me. A cake, humble, with uneven frosting, and a few candles flickering on top. My breath caught in my throat. "Happy belated 70th birthday, Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. For a moment, the world stood still. I stared at that little cake, my vision blurring with tears. Not because of the sweetness of the gesture itself, but because for the first time in so many years, I felt seen. Truly seen, not as a burden, not as an afterthought, but as a father, a man, a human being worthy of love and respect. The candles flickered gently, their glow reflecting in my children's eyes. And in that soft light, I realized something profound. Sometimes life forces us to teach the ones we love the hardest lesson of all. That love taken for granted turns to ashes. That respect ignored turns to regret. Never, ever take someone for granted. Because the moment you do, you might lose them forever. And if you, watching this, have ever felt invisible to your own family, let my story remind you of this truth. Age is not a burden. It is not something to be hidden or mocked. Age is a crown of wisdom forged through years of sacrifice, love, and perseverance. And those who fail to see your worth today will one day look back, wishing they had treated you differently. So cherish those who cherish you, and to those who don't, let time be the teacher they cannot escape.